Hello and welcome to Aging Matters. This is a show that is provided by and sponsored by the Berks County Area Agency on Aging. My name is Ann Barlet. I'm the Public Advocacy and Outreach Manager for the agency. Our show today is a topic that I'm going to say is a little difficult to talk about, and yet I believe that we must make people aware of and educate folks on our topic, which is elder abuse awareness and prevention. And my guest today is Kim Reinert. She is the Protective Services Supervisor with the Berks County Area Agency on Aging. Welcome, Kim. Thanks for spending time with us and talking about this difficult subject. I want to start right off because it's a lot that we can cover on elder abuse, and it is a shame that we actually have elder abuse. And so we want to kind of start with a little bit of different types of abuse, what that means, how one reports it, et cetera, et cetera. But I want to start with a definition that I found from the CDC. And I'm not sure, Kim, share with me if this is kind of in a nutshell or summary of what actually elder abuse would be.
Of
so
course.
The definition is elder abuse is an intentional act or failure to act that causes or creates a risk of harm to an older adult. And in this case, as we talk about elder or older adult, is someone age 60 and older. How does that summarize that?
Exactly. So it is acting or not acting, whether you know or don't know, the failure to ensure the safety of the person who is 60 or older. And what that means is ensuring the safety. We look at different areas of abuse, and those different areas of abuse are physical abuse, emotional abuse, financial exploitation, caregiver neglect, self-neglect, abandonment, and sexual abuse. So all those different types encompass that definition, and we look at everything when we go out and work with those older adults.
So in terms of suspecting that somebody, and in particular, because our focus for our agency is typically 60 and older, that anybody in any of those types of abuse that suspect that, let's talk a little bit about, I think, I want to say, and I don't know, so let's talk about each one of those abuses, a physical abuse, a sexual abuse, but they might not know some of the others like the neglect and the financial exploitation. So Let's just start with each of those quickly. Physical abuse.
Physical abuse is striking, hitting, not necessarily causing marks, but putting your hands on somebody else.
Okay.
Emotional abuse is degrading somebody, threatening them, even such statements as, I'm going to put you in a nursing home is a terminology for emotional abuse.
But because it's creating a threat.
Okay. Correct.
Okay, it's in sharing that. Okay.
Correct. Financial exploitation. This could go different ways. We have financial exploitation of somebody taking your money without your knowledge or your consent. And then we have exploitation of someone taking your medications, which is not prescribed to you. We have caregiver neglect, someone who is not changing you regularly, someone who is not providing basic supervision for your safety.
And if I may interject, so it's somebody that is supposed to be providing care to an individual. And that can be a paid caregiver or a non-paid caregiver, correct?
Correct. It could be family members. It could be your neighbor next door. It could be anyone who is supposed to be ensuring your safety.
Okay.
That is correct. Self-neglect.
Yeah, explain that a little bit more.
So this is someone who is not taking care of themselves by not going to the doctor, not changing their briefs of living in their home alone, but sitting in soiled briefs to the point that's causing sores, not allowing supports to come in to assist you, and that's putting you at risk for serious diseases, leading
Medical
to the
harm
hospital.
or-
Yes, exactly. Abandonment is that you have been left in a place and there's no one to assist you.
Okay.
And
So a thought, and see if this is correct. So let's say that because we're talking elder abuse, and we're going to stay with elder, somebody over
Correct.
60. An example of that would be if somebody, family member, whoever, doesn't have to be, says, let's move in together. We'll move in this place together, apartment, a
Okay.
trailer, house, and we'll share expenses and costs. And they move together, and then the other entity, the other person, kind of just says, "Oh, you're on your own. I thought you had more money than you did. I'm getting out." Like they leave them alone,
Correct.
knowing that, and that's okay if they're not. That's not abuse unless
they physically
they
cannot care
need
for
it.
themselves.
Right. Okay.
Correct. Yep.
All right. Very good.
And then sexual abuse is unwanted, inappropriate sexual touches, whether it's groping the breasts, groping the genital areas, rape, things of that nature.
And the word that you said there, I believe that is key, is unwanted.
Correct.
Okay. All right.
Correct.
So we have all of those types, and my thought is, it never happens here, right? We don't have that in Berks County. So let's, can we bring it to Berks County? Do we have can you share with us any statistics that relate to us specifically in Berks County in terms of where do we stand? How big is the problem? And then do we see that more prevalent in any particular type of abuse? Or top 1, 2, 3, whatever.
So last fiscal year, fiscal year for 21-22, our agency took 1,788 concerns of abuse. Now with that number, we determined if we were able to make referrals to assist that person. We had to transfer to another county because Berks specifically, we only work with individuals located within Berks County. So if you live outside the county, we'll transfer that to that particular county. So although we took 1,788 concerns, we investigated 1,225 investigations. So with that number, we averaged per month 102 investigations.
Wow, 102 per month.
Yes,
Wow.
for the last fiscal year. And with our statistics and gathering all these numbers, we have determined that self-neglect, caregiver neglect, and financial exploitation have been the 3 highest allegations that have been reported to our agency. And with that, financial exploitation continues to be on the rise with the increase in social media and scams, people not monitoring their bank accounts, letting friends use their debit cards, things of that nature. So,
Okay. So, and I was going to ask then, give me examples of some of those maybe that have occurred. So you want to start with financial exploitation, because I think in what I do with our outreach, I think of scams. I think of the scam on I want to say broader scale, bigger scale, in terms of some entity somewhere in some other place who's doing the phoning or the texting
oil
or
rigs.
the emailing that
Yep.
says you won the lottery, and in order to get that money, you just have to send this amount of money
to pay taxes.
Yeah, for taxes,
Yep.
administrative fee, whatever, and they lose that money, and then
Correct.
sometimes that's not enough. Or other ways that they're doing broader, the banking system, if they accidentally have access to a card, they might call and pretend to be Medicare.
Yep.
Or the bank. I've also aware of the scams where they pretend to be from a bank or credit union and say your accounts got messed up, and we want to make sure we did everything right. And
So
that
please
you are this
provide
person.
your
Give us
account
that to
number, your social
verify it.
security
Yeah.
number. Yep, we
That's
see
what I
those.
think of. But And we see those, right?
Correct. We see all of that. We see
Okay.
the bank scams. We see the publisher clearinghouse scams. We see the romance scams. We see the oil rig scams. To give you a particular example, one that's coming to mind is we had a consumer who had an aide who was purchasing groceries for them when they were in providing their services. This aide then went and purchased their own groceries, made a car payment, traveled to New York City, and went on a shopping spree that weekend. And only after we became involved were we able to help this individual secure their accounts.
And so that person doing that was utilizing the older adult's credit card or
Credit cards,
banking
yep.
account.
Yep,
to
keeping
pull
the
out
cash, keeping the change if cash was given. Correct.
Okay, so it happens intimately.
Yes, and
I
this was
guess I
someone
wanna
that they
say, yeah,
knew.
to carry for them, responsible to assist them probably daily or every other day with basic needs.
Correct.
And then taking advantage of
Yep.
that individual and getting
Yep.
money and credits.
Yes, because this aide worked with this individual for a significant amount of time, built that trust, and this older adult was none the wiser.
So we have the intimate, I'll call it, and then the other one, the broader scam one as well.
Correct.
So that's financial. Let's talk about the other two. You said, let's go with caregiver neglect. I think that's a little under, do you have an example of a caregiver neglect by any chance?
So we've had family members who were supposed to check in on a particular older adult. However, the check-ins were becoming less frequent. So the older adult was sitting in their briefs. They were on the cusp of becoming confused and needing prompts.
Maybe not getting medicines because they couldn't get to wherever
Correct.
the medicines were, so they weren't getting that.
They weren't getting their
Okay.
medications, they weren't getting change, they weren't eating properly. So ultimately, because the caregiver wasn't coming in and checking in on them, ultimately the primary care physician diagnosed them with failure to thrive because they had lost so much of their nutrients and body mass and things of that nature that it was just
Yeah.
they couldn't
That's
come
a
back
mess.
from that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we worked with this individual to establish constant caregivers. We tried to get paid agencies in, and then worked in other family members who were aware.
I'm responsible
Correct.
to help.
Because with what we do, there's a difference between a caregiver and, as I gave in that example, yes, they were a caregiver, but they weren't a responsible caregiver, and that's what we're looking for when we are working with our adults.
And that's different than, I want to clarify for people who are like thinking about and questioning, it's that was a person who was supposed to be doing certain things for this individual defined thing. It's not something necessarily that is where they have a caregiver who just, for whatever reason, was detained and gets there an hour late.
Correct.
Or something like that where, it's I don't want anybody to pick up the phone and go, they're an hour late. It's
Yeah,
a report
no.
necessarily. It's checking up on maybe that person, call that agency or call that neighbor, whoever, to make sure that they're all right or that they weren't detained or in an accident or something. And then let's really quickly touch on the self-neglect. You mentioned earlier it was somebody who really isn't, I want to say taking care of themselves, but it's
making the best choices for themselves.
All right.
It is really what it comes down to, because they could feel that I'm not allowing aides in because I could do it myself, but you, the general you, are not able to do that. You're not making it to the bathroom. You can't open your medicine bottles because of whatever reason. So therefore, you're not taking your medications properly. You're having issues with transportation, so you can't get to the doctors regularly. That I don't want to say refusal of services, but the inability to provide your basic needs.
Oh, okay. All right.
To
So that's a good example. I like that, of unable to provide your own basic needs
Yep.
is self-neglect. Okay. So I know this is a big, broad question, but it is. So who in all these reports, who are these people who are committing elder abuse? I mean, we have the big, larger scam folks.
Correct.
Who might be some of the folks, if we're talking these intimate kinds of situations, the local involvement?
Everybody and anybody is a part of it.
Unfortunately.
So long is the stranger danger of the people across the seas. It's our friends, it's our family, it's the people that we have grown to trust.
And depend on.
Exactly.
Okay. So let's take this time to talk about what can we do. I guess ultimately we want to prevent it, and one of the reasons we're talking about this is to make people aware, so we become a little bit more in tune for ourselves and for others, and that we can prevent the abuse if we start to see some unusual things. But before we can do, what do we do if now I've listened to our talk thus far and think, oh, wonder if that's what's going on with, Mary next door, or gee, I've seen this happen or heard this. What do we do?
So the general public could always call into our agency. Our phone number is.
Oh wait, we'll see if we can get that. Oh, there we go. It's on the screen.
So please call this phone number. We are open. Our office hours are 8 to 5. We are a 24-hour a day, 7-day-a-week agency for emergencies, for information on just asking general questions. We could help guide you to get that information. If you have suspected concerns for your friends, family, things of that nature, we can give you information.
So the first is the reporting by calling our agency at 610-478-6500.
Correct. Okay. And you will talk to any one of our knowledgeable staff about what are the next steps.
Okay. And so that's, where and how. It's simple. It's call.
Exactly.
And so one of the things is so as that person calls and they decide, I think I should, and they have somebody that they're talking to in the area agency on aging, what kinds of things should, I guess, either they be prepared to provide when they're calling our agency, or for making that person who's calling it in, how to make them more comfortable with the questions that might be asked when they call in? What kinds of things are we asking?
Our basic questions is name, address, and what are your concerns? Okay. Additional information that is helpful is primary care physicians, medications if you know, your observations of the condition. Are there any dangers, any supports that you are aware of? Because all of that encompasses the baseline of information for when the investigators go out to the home and know what to look for.
Okay. So it really helps to have as much information as possible about the circumstance.
Correct.
And timely in terms of that.
Correct, because especially, with any of the abuses, it's always nice to call in as soon as you suspect something. But as time goes on, information does go away. Physical abuse marks do go away. They start to lessen, things of that, due to confusion in some of the older adults. They may not remember the incident. As hard as it is to say, we get lied to every day. So the more information that we have and can use that to talk to people to gather the correct information.
Or the details.
And the details, exactly. Okay. The better we'll be able to assist the older adult.
And I know that sometimes people are hesitant to get involved.
Yes.
So is there, how does that work then? With whoever is the person who's reporting what they know, they're the reporter calling in with the information. What happens, and then also it's a combination of where do they fit into the picture, and what happens to them then, I guess.
So the reporter will always. We document that information, but the reporter, that information is never released. That is confidential, and we take confidentiality extremely seriously. Due to that, our number one objection when we go out is to make sure the older adult is safe. So if there's any concerns for retaliation, any inkling of that, we don't talk about the concerns with anyone else. We will talk to friends and family and say, do you have concerns? But we will never disclose those allegations to other people.
So the person who's is the victim, and any of the people that you might be investigating related to the victim,
Correct.
they are not going to know who is that person that called.
Correct.
Okay.
That information is never released.
Okay. And then I know a lot of times we get questions from that person who's called it in because they have a concern
Correct.
for a family member or friend and want to know what happened. You know, did you go see them? How are they? Are they okay? You know,
Yep.
What kind of obligation through the Protective Services Unit at the agency do they get to have an outcome or any information at all?
And again, with our confidentiality, we can't even disclose that information. We are just asking, what concerns do you have? Did anything else happen that you have concerns of? We cannot let anybody know anything except for that older adult.
Okay. I'm thinking if it is a neighbor or a friend, hopefully they keep checking up on that person.
Agreed.
To make sure that what they reported almost maybe has helped to stop or contain
Agreed.
at that point and prevent something further from happening. And if they keep in touch, that's a good way also for us in the community to do that, to prevent
Agreed.
that further.
Agreed.
Okay. So let's talk now. They've made the report, you've gathered the information. Protective Services staff at the area agency and our aging investigate, right?
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about how that relates also between a crime, a criminal activity. Does the person only report, I guess, to our agency? What other places should they report or shouldn't they report? If you can help us understand that.
So we are not a criminal entity. We do not do criminal investigations. We will work hand in hand with the criminal entities, but our investigations are completely separate. So if you call into our agency and have not talked to the police, we will strongly encourage you to talk to the police. We will strongly encourage you to call the Attorney General's office. We will strongly encourage you to seek power of attorney, legal services, things of that nature, depending on what the crime is. We cannot contact and make any reports without the older adult's consent. So if you are fearful of your perpetrator of the situation, we will be there with you and help you with that, but we cannot do that for you. So the sooner you do that, we don't need to assist you with that. I mean, we will give information as requested, but we are not the same entity, and we do not have the same information.
To not bypass also, it can be in addition to, in some cases, but not to bypass that. So if it's a physical abuse in a domestic situation, they still may want to call us to report that. So there can be an investigation, but then also, domestic relations, the PFA, something else, that might be necessary. Same thing with banking, financial
Agreed.
things, to prevent further encouraging them to call their bank, stop certain
Agreed.
things. Okay.
And sadly, a lot of people do not contact those entities because they do not want to see their loved ones get in trouble. So despite our encouragement.
Okay.
Yep.
And let's talk about one quick, in the couple minutes we have left, a myth maybe that we've heard over time is the Office of Aging in that circumstance pulls that older adult out of their home and puts them somewhere. Do you do that?
So Taking someone out of their home is our very last resort. Our goal is person-centered focus. We want to work with them. If you want to be in your home, we will assist in any which way that we can to get aids, get a responsible caregiver in the home, work with them. In order to remove someone from their home, we would need to go to the courts and have them be deemed incapacitated, or have the power of attorney who has already an evaluation saying that you do not have your faculties with you and are incapacitated to do that. So,
and that's such a long process.
Exactly.
That's kind of the extreme where you're trying to just stop what happened,
Exactly.
separate maybe the perpetrator from the victim, straighten it out for the victim.
Correct.
Work with other entities and prevent it
Correct.
from happening again.
Because of it being the last resort, we will make those referrals to any of the agencies that the older adult is willing. Again, as long as the older adult is willing, we will help them for as long as we can to stay in their home.
Great. We have about a minute, so let's, if we can, put up the slide again to report suspected elder abuse, whether that's physical, emotional, sexual, neglect, abandonment, and financial exploitation. You can call the Berks County Area Agency on Aging at 610-478-6500 and speak with a staff person who can gather and take that information and move it forward in our protective services unit. Well, that's our show today. I appreciate, thank you, Kim, for being my guest and sharing this information. And we look forward to seeing everybody next month on Aging Matters.